this is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so in this episode we actually find out a bit more about Gakuho Asano's backstory and why he's so dead set on leveling Class 3 to the ground and getting rid of them. So it starts out where the last episode left off, where Koro Sensei has since been blown up by an anti-sensei grenade and is badly injured from solving the maths portion of the little challenge that Asano has set up for him. And while Asano believes initially that he has Koro Sensei on the ropes, as it turns out, not even remotely close. Koro Sensei has apparently memorized all of the test booklets that Asano had set up, except for math. Pointing out since somebody had been loaning the math book out, and he hasn't had a chance to actually study up on it and make sure he knows it top to bottom like the other ones. So because of that, he's able to easily solve the rest of the math problems, leaving only the one subject for Asano to solve. And as Asano prepares to go into the test, Koro Sensei remarks that when people are faced with certain death, they see their life flash before their eyes, and wonders what's going on, what Asano is currently seeing. And as it turns out, we actually do find out his backstory about why he hates E-Class so much. As it turns out, the building that would later become Class 3E's satellite campus was actually his former cram school that he founded himself from the ground up. As we see through in this little flashback, his teaching philosophy for Koro Sensei was very much along the same as with what is now. With what Koro Sensei has now, it was basically the same. He encouraged everybody to actually do their best and become the best students they can possibly be, and one of his students, Rikudo Ikeda, was actually his personal favorite and was actually the student he tried to take under his wing the most. And he actually did have a soft spot for Rikudo and actually used assassination to actually teach him to actually focus and get to school. And also set up a thing where he can try and do a mock assassination once a day, and if he wins, he gets the cut to class. If not, then he has to go to school and do that. But after a year passes, his school actually winds up becoming a rousing success, and more parents begin to send their students to him. And by this point, Ikeda has long since graduated from the cram school. And while everything is booming, he actually calls up Asano and tells him that he wants to actually meet with him and go out to dinner, and points out that he's noticed how well the school has been doing and wanted to send his congratulations on top of that. And Asano does decide to actually meet up with Ikeda after so long, and decides that next week will be the next best opportunity to do that, because he already has business, so he might as well go visit Ikeda next week. However, when he gets there, he finds out that his family is actually in mourning, and that Ikeda had actually committed suicide because he was being bullied, which is where Asano's current philosophy of teaching actually came into being. After realizing Ikeda had been bullied to the point of suicide, he believed that he actually wasn't teaching them to be strong and instead decided to find out what strength was, and then spent the better part of several years actually training himself to find out all different kinds of strength. And while he was at it, he also drove the two bullies that actually killed Ikeda into a gambling addiction, so that they wouldn't be a problem for him anymore. Basically, not only is he trying to get revenge for what happened to Ikeda, but he's also trying to make up for his mistake by believing that he drove to enforce weakness in Ikeda, and that he doesn't want to repeat that with any of his other students. And which is how his current teaching philosophy came to be. He founded Kunigagaoka Junior High on the principle that everybody would be he would train everybody to be strong, and that the weak would be sent to a satellite campus as a reminder not to wind up being, well, Class E. So basically, his old school wound up being a permanent reminder of where he's been and how to actually improve himself. And that's why he's so gung-ho about leveling the thing to the ground, because Class 3E represents a side of him that he's not proud of. It represents a failure in his past that he just wants to forget and move on from. So, and naturally, after back in the present day, he proceeds to go and solve the problem. And everybody points out that they can tell that Asano is feeling defeated, and they can tell that he seems to be a little bit on the ropes. And they also point out that regardless of whether or not Asano actually fires Core Sensei and moved him to a satellite campus, they'll point out that regardless, they're going to finish the class together and keep it together themselves if they have to. And also though, Ben begins to wonder why he continues to indulge Class 3E, pointing out that they've actually been a persistent thorn in his side for the entire time, and that their determination is actually the reason why he's so determined to just get rid of E-Class once and for all, because he feels like he's indulged them long enough, and he feels like they're a sign that his philosophy has failed, so he wants to try and get rid of them. At which point he exposits to Core Sensei that he knows that strength isn't exactly the best strong suit, and that everybody faces death at one point or another. So, and then case in point, opens the textbook and doesn't even try to solve it. It just blows up with him in it, and he remarks that regardless of how hard you work, death will come for everybody eventually. Only for that not to be the case, because Core Sensei just kind of shields him with his skin molds to actually keep him safe. And when Asano wonders why he didn't waste it on himself, Core Sensei merely remarks that he was doing that specifically to keep Asano safe, and then proceeds to point out that he actually branched out to some of his cram school students, and his desire for his old philosophy on how he decided to be a teacher, and points out that their philosophy was exactly the same, and then he points out that they've actually been trying to mold young minds the same way as ever, and even points out that his current philosophy is actually kind of built upon his old one, that even if he doesn't realize it, he's been keeping his original philosophy alive all these years, that he's been using E-Class as a way to build up the other students, and prove that they can actually succeed, while also pointing out that the entire situation can teach people that they can actually not kill, but rather that they can actually teach each other how to actually wield multiple blades and actually figure out how to tackle different solutions, and not have to deal with different problems like that. And Asano is ultimately realizes he's been defeated, but is refused to admit it. Although he does remark that he will be checking in from time to time to make a mock assassination at Core Sensei, and Core Sensei responds that he wouldn't take anything less, pointing out that he feels like it would be a bit on Asano if he didn't continue to approach him as an academic rival. And with that, Asano leaves and goes back to the school to go home. At which point he runs into Gakushu, who is waiting outside the school, and Gakushu notices that Gakuho Asano has been defeated, and points out that he feels like Gakuho has finally realized that his philosophy doesn't work, and also points out that he's mainly there to actually prove that he wants to just kind of continue to find a way to beat his father, but his father merely remarks that he won't go down easily, because now that he's had his eyes opened at long last, he's now able to finally move on as both a educator and a father, and that he'll continue to improve himself even regardless of how long it takes. And Gakushu merely solemnly nods to that, and they proceed to go home. And then at which point the rest of Class 3 points out that now that they've actually defeated Asano, and have actually pointed out that he was going to give them a reward as a promise for them actually getting into the top 50. They then proceed to ask Core Sensei what he was about to say before he got rudely interrupted by Asano and his many giant construction equipments. At which point Core Sensei reveals that he can actually be stopped entirely if his tentacles are pinned down, and that's one of his biggest weakness. That if his tentacles are pinned, he can't move. So at which point the rest of the students try to dogpile on him to try and pin him down, which goes about as well as you expect. But in any case, after that whole ordeal with Asano, the Class 3 now actually has a different problem. The drama festival is actually coming up, and they need to prepare something for it. And while nobody is very enthusiastic with the idea at first, be pointing out that they have to be preparing for their entrance exams. the class reps merely respond that they actually do need to do that, with pointing out that they brought it up, that they did bring it up to the school council, but that Gakushu shut down pretty spectacularly, pointing out that if they can place in the top 50 by themselves, then a simple the means of actually writing a play and memorizing some lines should be child's play for them. So they decide to actually set it up. And they also argue a bit about who should be the lead. And they even muse a little bit about whether or not some of the other people should be. They actually muse about if Kaede should actually be the lead, because she did a very good job at the cram school, but with the kids. But Terasuka is actually quick to point out that she's too short, and which is just an opportunity for him to actually make fun of the fact that she's short. But also points out that the people need to be able to identify with the lead in the audience. At which point Koro Sensei volunteers, and everybody spectacularly shoots him down, quite literally, pointing out that he's supposed to be a state secret and that he needs to be kept private. But eventually they do decide that they can actually give him a lead in the play without him actually exposing himself. And as it turns out, they built this entire play around a man who becomes greedy because of a peach, which is Koro Sensei, and he winds up being the lead in that because he can actually make himself look like a peach. But it tells the story about a man who got way too greedy about how he tried to take everything and become the most successful man in the world because of his peach. And it's because of that point where his wife divorced him and tried to take half of his stuff, so he raised some wild animals to kill and eat her. So, yeah, cheery ending to the story, but it does wind up doing its effect, and Class 3 winds up winning the festival as well. That festival as well. And meanwhile, Gaku-Sano has been watching this entire thing on his monitor and points out that Class 3 that the school basically is in Koro Sensei's grasp at this point, and points out that it's almost as if the tentacles themselves are wrapped around the building. But he also points out that the Ministry of Defense has big plans for the future, and wonders if Koro Sensei will be able to weather what's coming. So yeah, this episode overall is that the main thing is that Gaku-Sano is no longer an antagonist in the series now. He has now learned that his teaching philosophy, while effective in the moment, did have some deep-rooted flaws in it, and is now decided to stop actively discriminating against Class 3E. So they no longer have to worry about him as a threat. He's just going to let them do their business and actually continue to work on improving themselves and keep Class 3E in the system. Now Class 3. So now that Asano is no longer discriminating against Class 3E, it begs the question of what's going to happen with the rest of the school, because now Class 3E is going to have to fall. Is going to basically just have the approval of the principal now. So, yeah, basically, long story short, we learn about Asano's backstory, and he's no longer a threat to the story and the students. But that begs the question of where the story's going to go from here. So, that's going to do it for my review of Assassination Classroom. What do you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter in the description below. And also be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Also, if you want to see more videos from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me and what YouTube thinks you will like based on that. So, if you want to try something new, or something that you may or may not like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!